When I was younger and playing around with friends, I did the unspeakable. I killed a frog. I stepped on it. I'd like to think it wasn't my fault, but it came out of nowhere. I was shook. I felt so sorry for killing the frog that I made it a funeral at 9 o'clock at night. You're probably thinking, oh, it's just a frog, let it die. Or there are plenty of other frogs out in the world. Although that last statement is true, it shouldn't be any different than other animals dying, like a turtle, a monkey, or a polar bear. For instance, I killed a frog, but would your feelings be different if I accidentally killed a dog? We feel differently for various animals around the world, only because we don't know or care to know what each animal does for its community or ecosystem. We need to pay more attention and provide protection to those that are on the endangered species list. The laws on poaching endangered species, specifically rhinos, at the federal level need to be enforced more diligently, while the rangers in charge of the terrain and animals issue harsher punishments when found guilty. The problem of poaching is still a world issue today, and it is definitely not getting the attention it deserves. Poaching is happening every day. Animals are getting killed for their tusks, horns, fur, or body parts to sell on the black market or to other countries that cherish it, like Asia or China. If poachers even get caught, the crime they are committing is far worse than the punishment they are receiving. Right now, there is a lot of variance for punishment for the poachers. We need to be more strict and narrow when sentencing people. In Asia and China, rhino horns are in high demand for medicinal purposes and to display as trophies. With rhino horns, people believe they can cure hangovers, illnesses, or even cancer. Rhino horns are in high demand in the eastern part of the world, specifically Asia. One rhino horn could go for $100,000 per kilogram, with one horn being 1 to 3 kilograms. That makes it more expensive than gold. There are only 5 species of rhinos left in the wild: Sumatran, Javan, greater one-horn, black, and white rhino. 3 of the 5 species has gotten as low to 50 to 100 individuals of their kind, and only 1 species has made it a semi-decent recovery, which is the white rhino. However, the black rhino has suffered the most. In 25 years, there is a 96% decline, from 70,000 individuals to only 2,410. Although some of these species of rhinos have made a comeback, there is plenty of subspecies of rhinos that were declared extinct in the last decade. All the species of rhinos are declared in the endangered area, whether it be critically or just threatened. All rhinos are being hunted, and there is only one way to try and prevent this. I really feel the only solution to this problem of extinction and illegal hunting of rhinos is for the government, EMIs, and NEMA to implement harsher punishments while continuing to personally protect rhino clusters around the savanna and other parts of the world. NEMA is the National Environmental Management Biodiversity Act, which puts in place protections for various species that are threatened or otherwise in need of protection. EMIs are enforcement management inspectors who represent national, provincial, and municipal authorities. It is the principal enforcement authority for NEMA and its subsidiary legislation. They conduct searches for inspections based on reasonable suspicion, which most of the time results in arrests. Under the Wildlife Trafficking and Poaching South Africa, the Law Library of Congress suggests when a person is convicted under the provisions of NEMA regulations is subject to a fine of the amount of 100,000 African rand, which is about $11,000, or up to 5 years of imprisonment. Rhino horns are being sold up to $300,000. It would be pretty easy to pay back the fine. With something as serious as poaching and killing Earth's creatures, 5 years is a pretty small price to pay, considering the larger context of the situation. With these horrifying images, like these, how can poachers get away with a minor sentencing? We need to enforce stricter punishments to jail time instead of a fine to teach them a lesson. Cost is mainly a concern with protecting rhinos more. Sam M. Fiera wrote in the South African Journal of Science and Management Strategies to Curb Rhino Poaching that with increasing value of rhinos, especially their horns, protection costs have soared, making rhinos a liability to state conservation authorities, private and communal landowners alike. We need to start protecting the rhinos by letting them roam the wildlife and protecting their sanctuaries. There was a couple specific comments in the surveys I sent out that stated we can't police every part of the terrain, and some said it would be very hard to enforce. With the world becoming more technologically advanced, I believe we could try to ease the manpower by policing the terrain with drones. Although this would rack up the cost of the project, funding drones for the rangers will benefit them, the rhinos, and other endangered species in the wildlife of the terrain they cover. The enforcing part would come with the combined effort of the government the poacher was caught in, but also in part of NEMBA and EMIs. I would also change the laws to spend a longer time in prison for the crime to benefit the growth of these rhinos, because the longer they are locked up, the better off the rhinos will be. There is no specific time spent in jail that could justify the life of a rhino or any endangered animal. But at least the time a poacher spends in jail is less time spent chasing after poor, helpless animals. Not only do we need stricter laws to prevent poaching rhinos, but we need to make the world aware of the vital role these animals play in the environment. Just think of the world without rhinos. They are defenseless in these situations against poachers. They might look all tough and mighty, but in reality, some run from danger instead of fighting. From the survey I created, most of you stated the only problem would be the cost of implementing these changes. I realize that some people would rather have the money go towards humanitarian efforts, rather than helping certain animals from extinction. But I promise you, instead of just standing there looking pretty, rhinos do help the environment. There is such thing as keystone species. These are animals that have a relatively large impact on the environment. Elephants are one of those keystone species, being labeled as the ecosystem engineers, with their ability to push over trees and stomp on shrubby areas. Wolves are also known as keystone species, being the apex predators, keeping the other wildlife from their population getting out of hand. From an article by the Smithsonian, rhinos maintain the diverse African grassland on which countless other species depend on, making rhinos a keystone species. I do know that enforcing this in the wildlife comes with a cost, but just think, not only will this money go towards a good cause, it will also save other species that depend on rhinos. If we fail to protect the rhino, the grazable area they produce for other animals will no longer be there. So the animals like antelopes, leopards, lions, and many more will also suffer. Soon there will be no rhino poaching, because soon there will be no rhinos. And if that day comes, the savanna will dramatically change. Although back in 1990s, rhinos were almost extinct. They made a comeback, but now they still aren't making a full recovery from the poachers, killing them for their horns. There is still hope for the future. Solving this problem does not happen overnight. It takes a collective effort to stop poaching and protect these endangered species. First, with protecting rhinos, then implementing harsh punishments. I have sent you all a link to the World Wildlife Fund website through Canvas, where you can sign a pledge to help stop wildlife crime. I myself have signed it, and it is a pledge to help wildlife crime wherever life may lead you. Also on WWF's website, there are other ways to help. You can back a ranger by donating to help fund equipment, training, resources, and infrastructure they need to stop wildlife crime. You can also symbolically adopt a rhino. This will acknowledge the conservation efforts of the World Wildlife Fund to safeguard these precious animals. It is hard to get personally involved, mostly because of the fact we live in the hemisphere that doesn't have rhinos at all. But we can still contribute from a distance. Everything has a reason for being on this earth. Everyone always wants to change, but is this the change we need? This is not a social Darwinism thing where it is survival of the fittest. Poachers choose between extinction and wealth. They don't know how killing the beloved rhinos is hurting this planet and the people around them.